Managers of Reddit, what made you fire an employee on their first day? We hired an external supervisor. On orientation day, he was an hour late from lunch. He checked in, said sorry I'm late, then proceeds to inform me he was going to the restroom. He had a 72-minute poop. We decided he was a poor fit for our corporate culture. He had a 72-minute poop. I know the thing is to poop at work cause the boss makes $1 while you make a dime. But the idea isn't to stay in there until you have made as many dollars as the boss earns during his normal length poo. Not a manager, but on this woman's first day she was clearly very stressed and not getting the responsibilities. She went to lunch and never came back. My boss called her and fired her, but it was clear she ghosted without even quitting. At a different job, this guy came to work on his third day in jeans and a hoodie. We were business casual but not that casual. An hour and he said he forgot something in his car and never came back. Same deal. Fired for job abandonment. She arrived 2.5 hours late. I had to wake her up because she forgot to set her alarm. She arrived high to work. To top it off, she sexually harassed a co-worker by asking her for a naked photo. She was out of a job by the end of the day. A fresh graduate who reported directly to me said to me in the most condescending tone ever, "It's important to understand stereotypes. For example, Spanish people are very lazy, so they are never going to work as hard and we have to understand it and treat them that way." Note, I, his boss, am Spanish. I have been a fast food manager a long time, so I have hired and fired a ton of people. Guy within 90 minutes of starting just started eating food off the cook's line. I walked around the corner, he just looks at me and takes a bite out of a chicken strip. I am not a big yeller, but I straight up ejected that dude like a baseball umpire. That's it, you're outta here. And this is why I could never have that job. I wasn't a manager, but a supervisor at the time. Dude's second day on the job. He called in running late from his bartending job. Shows up at the job. Grocery store third shift. So amazingly drunk that he could barely stand. He was upstairs in the bathroom shirtless and covered in puke. I called a co-worker in to help me convince him to get a ride home. He refused to get a ride. He kept saying how he's got a kid for about 30 minutes. I finally told him if he doesn't get a ride home immediately with my co-worker, then I'm calling the cops. My co-worker apparently held him back from fighting me in the parking lot. The guy still holds a grudge against me. Oh yeah, not only was he going to drive home, but on a moped. Frick that guy. Semi-NSW. Not first day, but first day without a trainer accompanying them. He managed crash a patrol car. That alone wouldn't necessarily have gotten them fired. The fact that it was into a school bus might not have done it if there were extenuating circumstances, since damage really was minor and no injuries sustained by anyone on the bus. The fact his girlfriend was in the squad car might not have done it if he had bothered to get permission. However, since there was no permission, we moved from might not to probably so. The fact that both the interior and exterior dashcam managed to accidentally get turned off, almost impossible to do by accident, but his body cam managed to, most likely, accidentally getting turned on though, guaranteed it. The only footage taken from that cam that night was of the top of his girlfriend's head rapidly and repeatedly entering and exiting the camera's field of vision. So close that you could see details that usually you'd never be able to see on a person's scalp, right up until impact caused the lens to shatter against her hair tie. The pictures some of the kids on the bus managed to get were just the icing on the cake at that point. Needless to say, at that point, I called my boss and got permission from my boss to end both a shift and a career that night. Became kind of an unofficial training point after that. No celebratory Bravo Juliets in the squad car. Why in the ever-loving frick would anyone ever think that was a good idea? How about a little switch up? I fired a guy on my first day. I got a job as a shipping and receiving manager for a small warehouse. I had 3 people working for me. I was told in the morning to keep an eye on one of them because they like to drink on the job. Sure enough, this guy ranked off beer after lunch and was drunk off his butt. The branch manager told me I had to fire him, so I did. He did not take it well. It was one of the most awkward moments of my life. Seems kinda messed up the branch manager didn't do it considering they had worked together for 5+ years and I only knew the poor guy for a few hours. I suspect you were hired, at least in part, specifically so branch manager didn't have to fire his friend himself. Not a manager but an employee. I caught my manager masturbating in the office and he immediately fired me and personally shooed me off the office grounds. Gutted since it was quite a high paying job and let's just say I cannot recover from that incident. What a W. My uncle lost a job 5 minutes in. He drove up and parked outside. Went in to do induction and paperwork. Turns out he parked on a hill and forgot to put the handbrake on in his car. It rolled into the boss nice, shiny, 5-day-old Rolls Royce. He was asked to leave pretty fast after that. I should mention it was a driving based job, so showing that he could actually drive and park sensibly was kinda important. Not a manager but an employee who saw it all and was slightly involved. I had a front of house job a few months ago for a brand new performance arts center, and since it was a brand new establishment, they did training in a boardroom with 30+ employees. One dude was just not cooperating. He kept falling asleep, moving around, and he argued about the sexual harassment regulations. The manager said there should not be anything risque posted inside your lockers because it's a unisex locker room and you gotta be respectful. He got upset and started a whole tirade about how it's his locker and no one should get a say on what he puts on or in it. He noticed halfway through training that he was probably on thin ice and tried to save his hide. He also noticed that I would fidget constantly, stand up to use the restroom, or do little hand aerobics with my pen or stare into space for minutes on end. I have ADD and had already told the trainers when I noticed we'd be sitting for 8 hours, so they turned a blind eye to my fidgeting. When they confronted him about his behavior, he dragged me into the issue by saying that if he was to be reprimanded then I should be too for being a distraction to my training. He was fired before his first day of work. Came in for the first day. It was a dress down day and he thought a t-shirt with a close up of a woman's face with CM dribbling down her chin was appropriate work wear. I had to tell him to leave again. Once had an employee call in sick on their first day because his dog ate all his C's so he had to take him to the vet. Like fair enough my guy. Get your dog sorted out. You don't work here though. Maybe lie next time, or hopefully this is a lion next time you'll think of a better one. All he had to do was substitute the word C for chocolate and it would have been a much better lie. It was day 9 because I had to write them up 3 times first, but they would not stop falling asleep, in the cube, in one-on-one meetings, and in front of a group of customers even. I tried to probe for medical problems that we could work around if needed, and they assured me they were healthy. Okay then, you just won't stop. Gotta go. I'm not sure this is the case here, but above you there is a very similar story where it turned out the employee had narcolepsy due to a new prescription, like he wasn't even aware he was falling asleep. I managed a property for a very wealthy couple for a few years. The property was huge and there were workers for the landscaping and then others for all the animals. It wasn't on this guy's first day, but maybe first 2 weeks or so, but I caught him smoking outside the barn where the horses were. Smoking wasn't the issue, it was where he smoked that was. He was smoking right beside where all the hay and shavings were kept. When I asked him what the heck he was thinking smoking there, his response was I thought it was okay because it's not inside the barn. I told him, it's even worse. At least the barn has rubber floor and isn't a massive pile of dry hay and shavings that can easily go up in flames with any spark. Left double quotation mark. The hay and shavings area was attached to the barn and the barn was all wood so it could have easily been a disaster. I had to let him go. He wasn't the brightest and was often left alone because there was so much work so he would often be alone and I felt uneasy with that. That being said, we are actually still friends and I helped him get his next job. That being said, we are actually still friends and I helped him get his next job. I am glad this one had a happy ending. Not a manager but when I worked at a country club in high school one of the lifeguards got fired after like a week of working there. There was a kid pretty much drowning in the pool and he didn't see it. One of the parents had to jump in and save him. This exact thing happened to my friend at the country club in my town. He was on his phone and didn't see a kid drowning in the lake. Not the first day but the first week. Dude would hit the casinos all night and would be half awake during the day. Fell asleep all the time and we'd frequently find him sleeping in one of the back rooms lying on boxes. Kicked his butt out. If you're working shifts in Vegas you really can't live that Haru Vegas life. It wasn't the first day but the third, nor was I manager. We had a H junkie get hired as a manager at a Taco Bell I worked at years ago. He came in the third night and spent the first 4 hours nodding off in the office before he decided he should probably do something. He comes out to the line and starts wiping down the food. I'm talking wiping down the cheese with sanitizer. He made it halfway down the line before he registered that we were trying to stop him. Hardware store manager here. We hired a full-time sales associate. Wasn't my first choice as he was so full of himself, but we were running really short and he seemed like he would be a decent employee. Well, first day he comes in and is doing fine. Working on the floor learning the register, and I noticed he had headphones on. Now we do have a no cell phone policy and it's posted around. I'm easygoing, so as long as it's not around customers and isn't frequent, it is what it is. Second day he comes on, same deal, and I pulled him aside and asked him if he could take the headphones off. He complained, but I said that's that and had him go back to work. Hour later he's around with headphones on again and I asked him to take them off again. After he got done complaining, we moved on with our days. Day 3 he comes in with music playing audibly from his phone speaker. I gave him 15-20 minutes and he was down an aisle working with the music playing. I had to pull him aside and explain how we can't have our phones out. We have customers around. He immediately started arguing with me, brought him down to the store manager and we fired him. A guy argued his way out of a decent full-time job SMH. Not a manager, but watched this one happen. Working for a big named soda brand as a order puller. Busy times, we were bringing temp help. Temp agency sent guy over. He knew where he was coming. Was told the basic rules, including nothing competitor related on property. Walks in with a big bottle of competitor's beverage in hand. Warehouse manager literally took one look at him, asked him if temp agency told him it wasn't allowed, and he said, with an attitude, yeah, but I didn't think it really mattered. For the record, the WM did try to give him a chance to remove it, but said it seemed like dude was just using it to get out of actually having to take the job. Dude went down in warehouse history. Go to have that RC Cola. Not a manager, but when I first started working at Walmart, we had a group orientation of about 10 people. There was an older husband and wife duo in my group. The guy kept saying this job was big for him. He'd ask a million questions, wanted to go over stuff that is self-explanatory, and he'd just wear you out by listening to his senseless dribble. It'd go on and on about nothing. We had to take some basic customer service training on computers. You watch a short video and answer 4 or 5 questions. You cannot fail these because they literally give you the answers. I hear this 40-plus-year-old man calling his dad during our break, "Hey dad, things are going good. I just got 100% on the test being 4 or 5 true or false questions." He then asked his dad when is he able to pick them up. I just felt bad for the guy because he didn't really seem all there in the head. The group trainer sits us down and tells us about how the schedule works. This guy starts freaking out. I can't work Wednesdays, like he wouldn't stop. He started asking random managers who had nothing to do with scheduling, let alone managing the new hires who aren't even officially in the system yet. He would not let up. Any manager he saw, he'd go up to them and talk their ear off about how he can't work Wednesdays. He pee off the wrong manager because he asked about his schedule 2 or 3 times in the span of 4 hours. The managers pulled him aside, wrote him a check for 4 hours worth of work, then told him to leave. They fired him and his wife quit right after. The sad part is that it seemed like this minimum wage, part-time job at Walmart really mattered a lot to him. I'd hate to imagine how he had to explain what happened to his dad. This one made me feel a bit sad. Hired as our after-hours concierge at 4-star hotel. Began his training with front of house, working with the head bellman that handled intake for our many foreign language speaking guests. His resume boasted proficiency in Italian, French and Spanish. He knew about 6 or 7 phrases in Spanglish. We were hiring for a junior server operator and got an application from a blue suitor that was getting out of the Air Force shortly. He was stationed at the base in town where I had previously done some contract work. Looking over his resume, he had decent skills and training, but claimed that he wrote a piece of software that I had actually written for the Air Force. So we bring him in for an interview and it's quickly apparent that he's vastly overinflated his resume. We save the best for the end. I ask, so this software you wrote, is the SQL password still password and he give me this look like a dog when he hears a high-pitched noise. How do you know the passwords for that? Because I wrote it. Say hi to Colonel P for me. I'm not getting the job. You are so not hired. I've never seen anyone turn so pale before in my life. A new bartender made a tiny cheeseburger with pickles as a garnish to a Bloody Mary with both red wine and sherry as ingredients. He decided to argue that it's the correct recipe. Bloke ended up confessing that he is high on codeine the whole time. Crazy person. I mean, I wouldn't be mad if my drink came out with a burger as a garnish. In 2008 my husband taught the training class for new salespeople. This new guy was complaining during lunch about this pit bull puppy he just got, how it wasn't mean enough, wouldn't do anything, and that he was gonna leave it on the street in Baltimore. The guy was let go and we took the puppy, which was in his car. That puppy became the single greatest dog I have ever known. He passed last year, and I still miss him. Not a manager but a co-worker of mine got fired on her first live day on the floor as a server because she didn't notice a table's sushi was never delivered to them. It was sitting in our side station. She dropped the check and the table was P. They told her they never got their sushi and she started describing what it looks like. Basically saying you're an idiot to the table. Manager ended up comping their whole bill, which was almost $300. I work at a really posh Asian restaurant in NYC, and she would have kept her job after all this, but turns out she lied to our GM and said the sushi guys never made it. I was still fairly new myself, so I packed the sushi to go and asked my manager what I should do with it. Well, I guess I threw her under the bus unintentionally and brought it to my GM's attention that she lied. When I left the restaurant later, she was crying in our employee smoking section. I felt really awful. She had just moved to NYC about 2 weeks prior and really needed the money. She was happy to throw the sushi guys under the bus, rather than admit to her own mistakes. Transfer from another office. Male employee made a derogatory comment to a female employee regarding the hijab she was wearing, and his excuse was it's okay because we're the same religion. Not a manager but I did floor training at a department store. New employees spent their first week watching videos and doing training exercises. This was her first day on the sales floor. I got an email that they were sending me a new person to train. She isn't in dress code and not wearing a name tag, so at first I didn't realize she was an employee until I saw her behind one of the counters, sleeping on the register, and the HR lady talking to her. HR asked her if she liked to keep her job. The new girl said yes. HR gives her another chance but has the camera guy watching. As soon as the HR lady leaves, the new girl crawls under a table of jeans and goes back to sleep. I'm guessing this was in a blind spot for the camera because she took a nice long nap. At this point I have other work and didn't want to train someone who wasn't going to actually work. I was hoping Sleeping Beauty would wake up and I could show her how to do the new inventory tracking tagging that I was teaching the other employees how to do too. No such luck. She did walk up to the counter. I starting to introduce myself. Sleeping Beauty took one of the fancy chocolates we sold, opened it, began eating, walking away without speaking to anyone. The HR lady came back and walked her out as she was throwing the wrapper on the floor. I employed a carer and witnessed her taking and eating food off of the plate of an autistic deaf-mute young person whilst it was in front of him and he was eating. Not fired, but I quit a job on the first day at Food Lion as a grocery stocker at age 16. In the middle of my first shift, manager comes by and tells me a toilet in the back is clogged and overflowing. Go and clog it and mop up. Okay, I said and walked to the back and surveyed the scene and looked around for a plunger. I could not find a plunger. So I walked to the housewares aisle and grabbed a plunger off the rack and headed back to the bathroom. The manager said, "What the heck are you doing?" I said I couldn't find a plunger. He told me that's our merchandise and said go put it back. I said how should I unclog the toilet? He said figure it out. Roll up a sleeve. First I laughed and then said, are you serious? You want me to use my bare hand to unclog a toilet? He was serious. I said pee off and left and went to Pizza Hut to meet friends and never went back. And also never got paid for the hours I worked, which is illegal. Bar manager here. Had a new bartender start before the happy hour rush. He served 2 ladies. Turned to his supervisor and proudly said, maybe if the ladies like their cocktails I give them, they will give me some pee, while the ladies and the husband's boyfriends were still easily close enough to hear him. Before we've calmed the guests down, he pisses at 2 waitresses by being generally misogynistic before starting an argument with the female manager. He lasted less than 2 hours. I was the manager of a household in a non-profit that helped recently released convicts and homeless men get back on their feet and back into society. Many stories I could tell, but this one is of a guy who lasted for the shortest time ever. First day was orientation and basic settling in. During this, he made a mess he refused to clean up, stole food from 2 people, including me, and fell asleep in the common area, living room. Second day, first official work day, he does all of 2 hours work, and immediately complains about his back and not being able to do more. We give everyone ample warning of the level of physical work required of them ahead of time. During this time, it's discovered he sold most of the medications he had, and left a huge mess around his bed. He comes back home, leaves without cleaning up to go shopping. He's brought back by a random woman who found him laying on the sidewalk in front of a church just down the street. Turns out he'd sold his meds to buy booze. He was drunk, bleeding, and clinging to a bag of ramen noodles. We called an ambulance for him, and after he left, packed his belongings and called his social worker to pick them up. Not one of the most ridiculous of situations, but the shortest. I'm very interested in hearing about the more ridiculous situations. Assistant manager of a Goodwill. People can work off community service time at Goodwill, and the local high school has a policy where if someone was caught with tobacco products they had to do 5 hours of community service. Not sure if that was for a first strike or the specifics, but I do know I had a buttload of teenagers working for me. Best job ever, except for the pay. Half my time was spent assigning work to kids, then chain smoking cigs out back and checking up on them and the regular employees every so often. Anyway, this kid came in wearing jeans and a bad attitude. Halfway through his shift, which involved sorting through donated clothes, I notice he's switched pants. He now has on a bright red pair of pants. Neon freaking red. I know they were donated earlier that day because they caught my attention. Asked if he stole them. He denied it, of course, and claimed he had been wearing them all day like I wouldn't have noticed his bright red pants. I punched his little time card thing. Told him to leave. His mom called later to beam me out. He only has 3 days left to get his 10 hours of community service finished. Blah blah blah. Offered to just buy the pants. Told her no, obviously. Not first day, but within the first 2 weeks, I interviewed this elderly lady for a front desk position I had open at the time. Data entry, email, real basic stuff. When I asked about computer experience, she told me that she had been working on them since they first became available to the public and held many positions in tech companies, like Verizon. She also told me that she was proficient with Microsoft applications. I offered her a job, excited about this experience she would bring to the table. Fast forward 1 week and I find out she doesn't even know how to open the internet browser on the computer. She struggled with Microsoft and found it acceptable to do crosswords while dealing with customers. When I spoke with her about these issues, she assured me they would be fixed. In hindsight, I should have walked her out then. After a few days, she had not improved and I decided it was best to cut her loose. When I told her she was being terminated, she immediately questioned everything. For 15 minutes I desperately tried to get her to understand why I need her to at least be able to open Excel on her own. Finally, she froze, and a smile began lurching across her face. If you fire me, that means I get unemployment, right? Correct. Thank you for the opportunity. Have a nice day. Always verify information, folks, and don't be as gullible as me. Not first day but certainly first week. Hired a new cashier who seemed cheery, hardworking and great with customers. Her till was short a total of about £60 from her first couple of shifts combined. This often happened with new staff in training due to keying errors, but it didn't resolve itself, so we kept an eye on her. An assistant manager spotted her, on camera, putting a safe deposit pod full of cash from the till into her handbag instead of into the safe deposit tube. Ridiculous that she thought she'd get away with it, as all the pods were numbered and would have been unaccounted for. I confronted her, did a bag search, found and seized the cash. She tried to claim it must have fallen in I told her this was clearly bollocks and that she was fired. I then instructed her to pay back the £60 her till was short, or I'd be reporting the incident to the police. She paid up and left. Another employee then told me that she had another part-time job at an old people's care home, so reasoning that if it were one of my elderly relatives in there, I wouldn't want them being left in the care of a thief. I reported the incident to the police anyway, as well as informing the care home manager too. I gather she lost that job too. The guy vanished from the factory floor on his first day without a word. Came back after half an hour eating an ice cream cone. He had heard the ice cream van in the distance and set out to find it. His standard of work and personal hygiene were both appalling, so we were going to fire him the next day anyway, but he didn't turn up. He called in to say he had been signed off work by the doc because of a bad back. This made getting rid of him a bit more complicated. A week or so later I was filling my car up with petrol and glanced across at the guy at the next pump. It was him and he was refueling his taxi cab. I manage an IT team. Had a 35-year-old lady come work for my team on contract. Basically temp work through an agency. I gave the agency the job description and they were supposed to send me someone who matched. This lady shows up for her first day and talked a good game. But when I show her the workspace and start talking her through how to navigate from one server to another on our system, I find she types like my 70-year-old mother, hunting and pecking so slowly she could probably only do 10 words a minute. She even used caps lock instead of shift for uppercase letters. Literally typed caps lock and A and caps lock, etc. Watching that for 5 minutes made up my mind this person had inflated their resume to get the job and really had no idea what they were doing. Quizzing her a little more in depth about her IT knowledge showed she was in way over her head. I had to tell her it wasn't going to work out because I needed someone to jump in with minimal training and hit the ground running, and that I didn't think she would be able to do that. She immediately started bawling her eyes out, telling me over and over how bad she needed this job until she left. For our technical sales jobs I would give a typing test. I didn't need fast, but, well, you could only type so slow and survive. And one guy who was otherwise great promised to come back in 2 weeks able to type with more than 2 fingers. He did, and he got a job. Not a manager but a trainer and witness it all. English isn't her first language, but communicating with her was difficult. She applied for a role where she interacts the least with people, which would be an overnight baker. Restaurant is closed but she is to prep and bake everything for opening at 5 AM. The first week she was supposed to start her first shift. She called in for the whole week. I don't know the reason. The second week came but she could not show up for the first shift. She showed up for the day after. Her husband dropped her off. He spoke perfect English and we had a talk. He kept asking so many questions such as how many people work overnight, what her main job role is, etc. He really didn't like the fact that she will be working overnight by herself even though there's cameras everywhere and the restaurant is closed. He unwillingly drove off after looking around for a bit. Teached her the basics. What needs to be baked and how many. She took some notes and watched for the most part. The next day we had a complaint written about our restaurant online and the person who wrote it wanted to speak the HR or whoever's higher up than my manager's and general manager's position. Turns out it was the newbie and her husband. They wrote how it was unsafe work conditions for a woman to work alone at night despite the restaurant not being opened, and demanded for more people to work during the shift. They also mentioned how it was incredibly difficult duty that was given to her. All she had to do was put pastries in the oven. It's pre-made, cooked, frozen. She also demanded a different role that we were not hiring for, nor do we even have that as an option for. She wanted to just clean, like a janitor etc. I had an employee show up for his first day in ripped jeans and a t-shirt with a naked woman on it, then got ignorant with me when I told him he couldn't work in that and had to go home and change. As an hour I've had it happen 3 times. 1. Person showed up in pajama pants and a baggy sweater because she said she wanted to be comfortable for orientation. 2. Person made a joke about burning down the brand new building, destroying property. 3. Person punched someone else in the arm jokingly. Sir, please be on your best behavior on your first day. Pretend like you're professional and let your wild side out later. Managers want to feel confident that they made the right choice hiring you, and if I don't see that, then I can't send you out to the floor. Had a girl that was such a terrible bartender. She told me she had 5 years experience. I asked her to make me a bucket of beer, and instead of grabbing bottles to put inside the bucket with ice, started filling up the bucket itself with draft beer. She also didn't know what was in a gin and tonic. Then the worst thing she did was ask all the non-white patrons for cards and tried to make them start tabs. BC, she told them she didn't want to risk them running off and stealing from her. Needless to say, I removed from her from behind the bar, told her to kick rocks. Little Caesars manager here. I once had an employee who got a face tattoo between the interview and training. Really nice dude, but unfortunately can't accept that for a cashier position. I used to manage a 24-hour mobile bar service that primarily worked Citrons festivals. The deal was free entrance and meals, 8 hours a day on shift, and 16 off to have free time at the party. If it was more than 3 days, we would usually give them a full day off to party. We paid them after each shift but split tips at the end of the party. So we mainly hired temporary kids that were too broke to buy tickets and wanted to work their way through the festival. It's safe to say that every graveyard shift some kid would not show up or come in tripping absolute balls and not be able to function. Drugs were obviously rampant. All they had to do was pretend to be more sober than the managers, or just have the tolerance to do basic functions. Not that difficult, you would think. It was always the rookies that failed. I had one idiot pull out his ballsack and offer a customer peanuts. Yeah, he got fired on the spot, and we took his wristband away. Apparently he made it through all 5 days without being busted by security. An employee abandoned their post to go tell someone off. No one was at the front gate for a solid half hour and traffic just rolled on through. Front gate for what? Late to his first shift because he got pulled over and the cops took away his birthday weed and gave him a speeding ticket. I asked to see the ticket. There was not one. Have a good day, sir. Was running a pizza shop years ago and was training a new delivery driver. He entered an address in his phone and it came up as being over an hour away. I told him that was wrong and showed him on a physical map how to find the house. The house was about 20 minutes away in a new development. Quite some time later, well past the time he should have been back, I got an angry call from the customer wondering where his food is. I figured the kid skipped out, so I remade the pizza and delivered it to the customer myself free of charge. An hour after I got back, the customer calls to complain that the kid just tried to deliver a stone cold pizza. About a half hour later, the kid comes in with the pizza and tells me that the customer didn't want it. I asked him where he's been for the last 3 hours and he tells me that the GPS took him to the wrong house. The one I told him not to go to, and it took him a while to figure it out. I told him politely to clock out and never come back. TLDR. New delivery driver relied on his GPS too much and tried to deliver a 3-hour-old pizza after driving in circles. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.